Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. A powerful, almost mystical quote. But what does it really mean to look within? In a world that teaches us to rush, to produce, to display, there was a man who chose to stop and gaze into the abyss of the soul. His name was Carl Gustav Jung. Today we step into the mind of one of the deepest explorers of human nature to uncover what we can learn from him, and more importantly, how his insights can transform our lives. If you're passionate about the human mind, history, and the transformative power of great ideas, this channel is your place. Subscribe and join us on this journey into the kind of thinking that forever changed the course of modern psychology. Carl Jung was born in 1875 in Keswil, a small village on the shores of Lake Constance in Switzerland. The son of a Protestant pastor and a deeply religious but enigmatic mother, Jung grew up in a household where spirituality wasn't just a matter of belief, it was an atmosphere, thick and almost tangible. His father, rigid and scholastic, represented the formal authority of institutional religion, while his mother, often distant and immersed in her own dark moods, embodied the mystery of the unconscious. It was in this tension, between the visible and the invisible, that Jung developed his double vision of the world. From an early age, he described living as if there were two selves inside him. One was young Carl, who played, went to school, talked with classmates. The other was an inner observer, a mature man dressed in 18th century clothes, calm, austere, silently watching him with wisdom and detachment. This wasn't fantasy, not in the ordinary sense. For Jung, this split was real, tangible. It was the first manifestation of a lifelong idea, that the psyche is layered, multiple, symbolic, and filled with archetypes. This sense of duality, of being caught between two worlds, never left him. It's no coincidence that as he grew up, he first turned to medicine, then psychiatry, but always with a special sensitivity to what can't be seen, what escapes scientific instruments. He studied at the University of Basel, where he stood out not just for his sharp intellect, but for an energy that puzzled many of his professors. He looked like a scientist, but something in him felt artistically restless. When he began working at the Burghölzli, a prestigious psychiatric hospital in Zurich, Jung found himself immersed in a system of rushed diagnoses, brutal treatments, and heavy prejudice. But his gaze was different. While many doctors saw psychiatric patients as bodies to restrain, Jung saw souls trying to speak through symbols, dreams, and images. It was during this period that he began experimenting with word association, one of his earliest contributions to psychology. He asked patients to say the first word that came to mind, and from the hesitations, slips, and contradictions, he glimpsed entire inner worlds. It was as if he were listening to a forgotten language. Then came Freud, the giant, the revolutionary. When Jung read The Interpretation of Dreams, it was like someone had turned on a light in a room he already knew existed, but had always wandered through in the dark. The two met in 1907 and spoke for 13 straight hours. They immediately connected, wrote to each other, challenged each other, inspired each other. Freud saw Jung as a spiritual son, the one who would carry on his legacy. Jung admired Freud, but something didn't add up. Freud reduced everything to sex, to libido, to repressed childhood trauma. But to Jung, the human soul was far more than that. It was myth, it was archetype, it was ancestral memory. Not everything in the unconscious is pathological. Not everything repressed is scandalous. Sometimes the unconscious speaks in symbols, through dreams, as if there were within us an ancient collective intelligence. The break between the two was painful, brutal, but inevitable. Jung could no longer pretend to be just a psychiatrist, he was becoming something else entirely. But after the separation came the void. For nearly 6 years, Jung went through a deep crisis, which he himself described as a descent into hell. He begins to have terrifying dreams, vivid visions, and deep inner conversations with imaginary figures. Some believe he's gone mad. Others distance themselves from him. But Jung remains lucid. He's exploring psychic territories that have never been mapped. During this time, he writes what would later become the core of the Red Book, a visually and spiritually extraordinary work that remains secret for decades. He draws, writes, reflects. He speaks with a figure named Philemon, a sort of inner guide whom Jung considers as real as any physical person. This isn't hallucination, it's dialogue with the unconscious. It's listening. What emerges from this crisis is not just a stronger man, but a transformed Jung. It's in this abyss that he discovers his most powerful ideas. The concept of the collective unconscious, the archetypes, the shadow, the anima, and animus. He realizes that every dream is a message, every symptom a metaphor, every inner image a potential guide. Carl Jung is not just a psychiatrist. He's a cartographer of the soul, a modern alchemist, not turning lead into gold, but turning anguish into understanding. His ideas will go on to influence art, literature, philosophy, spirituality, even video games and cinema. Just think how much his concepts of archetype and shadow inspired filmmakers like George Lucas or writers like Hermann Hesse. In a world dominated by materialism and hurry, Jung invites us to slow down, to listen inward. He doesn't ask us to heal quickly, but to pay attention to what lives inside us, even when it scares us. Because it is there, in the shadow, that our real potential often hides. To truly understand Jung, we have to make an effort. Forget the idea of the mind as a computer, a logical machine that processes inputs and generates outputs. For Jung, the psyche isn't machinery, it's a forest. It's alive, chaotic, organic. It's an ecosystem filled with symbols, dreams, contradictions, and energies that resist being pinned down. Imagine stepping into a dark cave covered in mysterious frescoes. That, to Jung, is the human soul. And his role wasn't that of a scientist, but of an explorer, armed only with a lantern and great patience, trying to interpret what he saw. One of the most revolutionary concepts Jung gave us is the shadow. It's not just a psychological theory, it's a powerful archetypal image. According to Jung, every person carries a shadow, a hidden zone where we bury all the emotions, thoughts, and impulses we consider unacceptable. Anger, envy, fear, forbidden desires. But not only that, also abilities that scare us, talents we're afraid to express, energies we've suppressed to be accepted by others. The shadow is not evil in the classic sense, it's everything we've pushed aside to survive, to fit in. It's like an invisible backpack we carry with us. The more we ignore it, the heavier it becomes. And Jung is crystal clear. If you don't know your shadow, you are its slave. You might think you're kind, balanced, rational, but then out of nowhere rage erupts inside you, or you sabotage yourself just when you're about to succeed. That's the shadow acting. Want an example? Think about when you judge someone harshly for a trait that irritates you. Often it's something you have in yourself but refuse to acknowledge. Jung calls this projection. That anger you feel isn't just about the other person, it's a message from you to yourself. The shadow isn't something to fight, it's something to integrate. You look it in the eye, and when you do, it can become an ally, a reservoir of raw, vital energy. Another central concept, perhaps the most fascinating and mysterious, is the collective unconscious. Here, Jung moves beyond Freud, beyond the psychology of his time. He says, inside us, there isn't just our personal history. There is something more ancient, deeper, as if there were a layer of the psyche shared by all of humanity, a kind of underlying software we all run on. It's made of archetypes, primordial images that appear everywhere, in dreams, myths, religions, movies, comic books. The wise old man, the hero, the great mother, the divine child, the shadow, the trickster. You find them in every culture, across every continent. It's as if the human mind speaks a universal symbolic language. And in fact, if you look closely, you'll notice that the most powerful stories, from Star Wars to The Lord of the Rings, are full of these archetypes. Luke Skywalker confronting the shadow, Darth Vader, guided by the wise old man, Obi-Wan, to save the world. This isn't just storytelling, it's mythic psychology. It's the narrative of our inner journey. And then there are dreams. For Jung, they were anything but nonsense. Not random brain dumps, not images to dismiss. They were messages. the language of the unconscious. Each dream, he said, is like a letter sent from the unknown part of you to your conscious self. And like any letter, it needs to be read. But here's the catch. You don't interpret a dream with a pre-made dictionary of symbols. A snake, for example, might mean fear or healing or transformation, depending on who's dreaming. The only way to truly understand it is to enter into dialogue with the dream. What is this trying to tell me? Why now? Jung often did this exercise with himself. He recorded every dream, turned them into drawings, reflections, even music. Once he dreamt of a dark figure chasing him with flaming eyes. Instead of running, he tried to talk to it. He discovered it represented a part of himself he had neglected, repressed rage, forgotten strength. Dreams are not enemies. They are messengers, even the strange ones, even the scary ones. But at the heart of Jung's entire philosophy is the process of individuation. A strange-sounding word, almost technical, but it contains something deeply human. To individuate for Jung means to become who you truly are. Not the mask you wear at work, not the social role you were assigned, not the image you perform to be loved, but you, the deep you, with all your contradictions, vulnerabilities, strengths, and insights. The path to individuation is long and often painful because it requires the courage to face your shadow, to see yourself without filters, to tear off all the masks you've stitched together to please the world. But it's also the only journey truly worth taking, not to become perfect, but to become whole. In an era like ours, driven by conformity, noise, and distraction, Jung reminds us that real freedom begins within. We weren't born to be copies. We were born to be ourselves. And every crisis, every dream, every repressed emotion can become a clue, a signal, a small step closer to that mysterious, powerful center that lives inside each of us. That's where Jung stops being just a name in a book and starts becoming a tool, a map, a silent traveling companion. His ideas aren't just theories. They are compasses for those who want to understand themselves, transform, and live with more truth. And in an age where we're hyper-connected yet disconnected from ourselves, his thought feels more relevant than ever. Let's start with the shadow. How many times have you gotten angry at someone for something you, deep down, carry within you? An arrogant coworker, a friend who's too needy, someone you call fake, overly emotional, or too cold. And yet, if it triggers you so deeply, maybe it's pointing to a part of yourself you're avoiding. Jung would say, when something hits you hard, pause. Don't rush to blame the outside. Ask yourself, why does this bother me? Where have I seen it inside me before? Jung suggested a simple but powerful tool, journaling. Write every day, without filter, without judgment. Intense reactions, strange dreams, embarrassing thoughts, hidden desires. Everything you'd normally push away, not to vent, but to welcome. The idea is this. If you don't shine light on your shadows, they'll keep driving, but from the back seat. Getting to know them makes you freer, more centered, not perfect, aware. And then there are dreams. This opens another world, literally. Jung said dreams are letters sent from the deepest part of us, and they don't always arrive clearly. Sometimes they're messy, absurd, even disturbing, but they carry a symbolic truth the rational mind can't grasp. Start like this. Keep a notebook by your bed. The moment you wake up, even in the middle of the night, write everything down. Even fragments, sensations, images, a tree, a collapsing house, someone you haven't seen in years. Don't go searching for fixed meanings like water equals emotions. Instead ask, what does that water mean to me today? If you dream of flying, what are you trying to rise above? If you dream of being chased, what or who are you running from in your life? Dreams speak in the language of archetypes, and the more you learn to recognize them, the more you begin to understand the messages your soul sends you each night. Now let's move to what is perhaps the most powerful core of Jungian thought, the process of individuation, which, in simple terms, means becoming who you truly are with no more excuses. How many of us live according to someone else's expectations? Family, society, work, social media, roles, masks, shoulds instead of wants. But there's a voice inside you, maybe quiet, maybe buried, that knows. It knows what excites you. It knows what you're missing. It knows what you're faking. That's what Jung called the self, your truest inner center. Following it isn't comfortable. In fact, it's often inconvenient because it asks you to leave safe paths, to disappoint expectations, to face fears you've spent your whole life avoiding. But it's right there, in the moment everything feels like it's falling apart, that your real self begins to emerge. Not the imitation, not the copy, not the filtered version for likes. You. Jung knew this well. He too went through deep personal crises. He too had to walk away from a safe path, from Freud's orthodox psychoanalysis, to follow an inner voice no one else understood. And yet, it was precisely from that rupture that his most profound work was born. That's where he met his self. So how do we actually use Jung today in a practical way? Start like this. Every time you feel a strong judgment towards something or someone, ask yourself, what is this person mirroring back to me? Every time a dream hits you with force, ask, what is this symbol trying to tell me? Every time you feel stuck, frustrated, drained, ask, whose life am I living? Mine or the one others chose for me? Individuation isn't a goal you check off, it's a daily path. Made of listening, honesty, and small acts of courage. It means making decisions that bring you closer to your true self, even when they cost something. Even when they scare you. And no, you don't need to become mystical. You don't need to move to the mountains or talk to spirits. Applying Jung means becoming deeply human. It means stopping the act. It means allowing yourself to be whole, complex, alive. And in a world that demands you be simple, fast, and predictable, that is the real revolution. We live in an age of hyperconnection. A world where you can know what's happening on the other side of the planet in seconds, where you scroll through thousands of faces, thousands of lives, thousands of surface-level successes. But the more connected we are outwardly, the more disconnected we often become inwardly. Jung saw this coming. Decades before social media, before smartphones, before the constant flood of images, notifications, comparisons, and polished perfection, he was already saying, modern man is in crisis because he has conquered the outside world but lost his soul. That line reads like prophecy today. In an age obsessed with numbers, performance, personal branding, and polished aesthetics, Jung reminds us that the real work is quiet. It's what you do when you turn off the phone, when you stop running, when you finally listen to yourself. His ideas aren't just for psychologists or scholars, they're tools for life, for creators, for leaders, for lovers, for anyone looking for deeper meaning in what they do. It's no coincidence that visionaries like Steve Jobs read Jung. Jobs wasn't just an entrepreneur, he was a storyteller, a symbolist. He understood that success comes when what you do on the outside aligns with who you are on the inside, and that is pure Jung. Or take cinema. George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars, built his entire narrative universe on Jungian archetypes. The hero, the mentor, the shadow, the anima, Obi-Wan the guide, the dark side, Luke Skywalker's inner journey. These are modern manifestations of the ancient forces Jung described when studying myths, religions, and dreams. And the same goes for the structure of the hero's journey made famous by Joseph Campbell, a thinker shaped by Jungian ideas. It's the same framework we see in movies, novels, video games. A character leaves their comfort zone, faces trials, encounters shadows, finds a guide, discovers who they truly are, and returns transformed. But Jung isn't just useful for writing scripts or building companies. He's essential for making peace with ourselves. In a world that constantly demands we be someone else, prettier, richer, happier, faster, Jung invites us to be what we already are. To feel, to fail, to doubt, to transform. Not because we need to fix ourselves, but because we are already whole, even with our wounds. And this is one of his most profound insights. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be authentic. Authenticity isn't a hashtag, it's inner work done daily with awareness, listening, and choice. It means stopping the chase for ideal images and starting to live in alignment with your truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's terrifying. Jung is relevant because he gives us language for what we feel but can't express. He teaches us that we are not alone in our inner chaos, that our crises have shape, meaning, and a kind of archetypal universality. That anxiety, anger, confusion, nostalgia are all voices of the soul asking to be heard. And so yes, today more than ever, we need Jung. Not just in therapy rooms, but in schools, companies, relationships, in everyday life. We need less performance, more presence, less control, more consciousness. Because if we don't learn to inhabit our inner world, we'll lose ourselves in the outer one. And maybe Jung's most powerful message is exactly this. You're not here to become someone else. You're here to become yourself. Jung doesn't give you easy answers. He gives you tools. He tells you, go inward, face your shadow, dream, listen, then choose. Not to become perfect, but to become whole. If there's one thing to take from this video, it's this. The part of you that you avoid might be the key to unlocking your strength. Your dark side isn't your enemy. It's your energy, waiting to be understood. If this journey resonated with you, subscribe. In the next episodes, we'll explore more great minds whose legacies still shape the way we live and think. Drop a comment and let us know what struck you most about Jung's ideas and who you'd like to meet next. Because history isn't just the past, it's a mirror where we can glimpse our future.